The team can't be an afterthought. The team's the first thought. And when we grow the team and we're getting quality people that get people that are good at having those kinds of conversations, that are open to learning, that are trying to grow in a relationship with God, things really start changing. And I think when we got that team quality higher, we started just growing and people started coming.
When you took over Alpha, how big was it? And then how big is it now?
I think typically we were getting maybe 50 to 75 guests per session. And now we've been around 200, 225 sign-up guests per session.
How do you identify people who have the capacity to make great team members and maybe develop into potential leaders? If I was a person, and let's say you were given my name as somebody who would be good to come back on team, and you were calling me to invite me, let's walk through that. For all those people listening, this is for you.
Yeah.
What would you say to me? So the phone rings. Hello.
Hey, Ron.
Welcome to the Huntley Leadership Podcast, helping leaders be a positive catalyst in the people they support, the organizations they serve, and the communities they live. This podcast will make you think, laugh, and grit your teeth with new determination to make your parish or business a place of transformation, passion, and purpose. If you're still breathing, you are powered for impact.
If you're not looking for and recruiting leaders of capacity, I can almost guarantee you your church is in the middle of dying. My name is Ron Huntley, and I get it. It is hard to raise up new teams. But I know for us, we took 3 churches that were not doing so well that came together as one church and absolutely turned it around here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Our guest today is Louis Cain, and he works in St. John, Indiana. And Louis is no stranger to identifying and recruiting amazing leaders to help turn around and continue to grow what they're doing at St. John the Evangelist. So, Louis, it's great to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Ron. It's good to be here.
I'm going to invite you guys to stick around to the end, too, because I'm going to tell you exactly what I do to recruit great leaders. And so you're going to look forward to that. But Louis, what do you tell us a little bit about why is it important to have a great team, and what difference does it make?
I think the team in all ministries, and especially in Alpha, I think makes such a big difference. And I think it's probably, in my experience, the most important thing about doing Alpha and growing Alpha, because people's experience of Alpha tends to be the most important experience is their experience in the small group. Yeah. And the quality of your small group is dependent on the quality of your team and how good they are with people, how they are to be able to create an open and friendly dynamic where people can be honest and really explore faith. That's compared to the team. So everything can be perfect in Alpha, but if your team that's leading the small groups isn't awesome, your Alpha is not going to be awesome. It's pretty much as good as your team is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because it's not a magic bullet in itself, is it? It can fail miserably.
Oh, yeah.
It can peter out. It can die.
Yeah. And if you get someone on the team or in your small group that really, really impacts the small group in a negative way, it's the team's responsibility to neutralize the problematic person. But also, the team sets the tone. The team sets the whole experience is about that small group dynamic from the moment that they sit down in their small groups for dinner.
Yeah, fair enough. What about how that applies to other things that you like? What else do you tell us a little bit? I know you're the director of evangelization at St. John the Evangelist Parish, and if you guys need to check that out, you need to go over to SJE Plus and check these guys out. They're on fire. Big conference coming up on September 25th, and the Discipleshift conference, and that's something they're going to be doing every year. So I really encourage you to check these guys out. But what are some other things that you're responsible for, and how does having a good team kind of relate to that?
Yeah, well, I think team partially means empowering people. And so that's not just the staff that's running things, or it's not just, a couple of people, but when there's an emphasis on growing people in leadership and really in commissioning them to be disciples, that's kind of the end goal for our people in our community, that when you grow them, it grows beyond just the ministry that they're a part of. And that those become the key people in the community, that they're having spiritual conversations, that they're inviting, that they're witnessing, that they're evangelizing. That's only possible when we commission people to go out. And so being intentional about the team is so important, because you're giving them the opportunity. incrementally so that they can grow in confidence and that they're not doing things that are overwhelming to them. But the goal is to unleash them into the world, right? Like that they're having these things, not these kind of conversations or this kind of disposition in life in their workplaces, in their families, and with whoever they come in contact with, and then also within the direct ministries of the parish.
Amazing. And you're talking about one of the things you said earlier was that, if you have a problematic person, sometimes in your alpha group, when you're in your
Mhm.
small group, then it's the team's job to neutralize that and bring that person along. But what if that's the team member? And I guess that's the point, right? If that's a team member, boy, that is not helpful.
Yeah, very true. Very, very difficult. If that's a team member, that's really problematic. Which definitely has happened to me before. Definitely, for sure.
You and me both, and maybe sometimes I've been that problematic team member. I don't know, but it really is helpful. So when you first took over Alpha at your parish, because it was
Right.
already running at St. John the Evangelist when you took your role, what is it that you inherited, and what needed to change when it comes to the team?
Yeah, so I think that what I inherited was that we had started Alpha for a couple of years, and it kind of started out pretty big, and then was kind of starting to taper out. We also had COVID was around that time when I first came in
Mhm.
to the parish, and so it was definitely part of the culture. There was a lot of people that had positive experiences, but really what I saw was a lack of emphasis on the team and more of an emphasis on the guests, and that was a really big turning point for me, was to think about the team really as just as important as the guests, if not more, because that's the ministry in and of itself. So the team can't be an afterthought. The team's the first thought. And when we grow the team and we're getting quality people that get people that are good at having those kinds of conversations, that are open to learning, that are trying to grow in the relationship with God, things really start changing. And I think when we got that team quality higher, we started just growing, and people started coming because people started having positive experiences. People started inviting their friends, especially people on the team. And so it just very quickly grew to be much bigger than any of our previous alphas happened. And we made a lot of changes, but I think that emphasis on the team was really one of the central ones.
Isn't that amazing? And you're saying that, a lot of people took a long time to recover from COVID. Some people are still trying to recover from COVID. But your experience of Alpha, as you shifted that emphasis, like that was actually for the most of the world still during COVID, because I know you guys are out, you guys are punching COVID right in the face in Indiana. Like, you're like, yeah, whatever, let's keep going. And so your Alpha actually turned around when a lot of churches were still struggling, didn't it?
Yeah, so would have been spring of 2022. We made a lot of changes. Our first alpha after COVID was summer of 2021, I believe. That was our first alpha with food and things.
Sure. And so when you took over Alpha, how big was it, and then how big is it now?
I think typically we were getting maybe 50 to 75 guests per session, and now we've been around 200, 225 sign up guests per session,
And how
which
many years has the church been running Alpha approximately?
I think it's about 8 or 9 at this point.
And so you've been actually growing your Alpha after, after all that
Yeah.
time. It's like, no, you're still gaining steam.
And the cool thing about it too is, and I think this is true for a lot of parishes that run Alpha that keep on running it, is that at first you get your first movers in a church. You get the people that are going to sign up for everything. That's great. Alpha can help them grow, but it's not really the target audience, right? The Alpha is about bringing people to faith that have no faith. That's
Mm.
essentially what it's about. But it takes a long time to get there. And I think that each Alpha season, even though our numbers as far as signups aren't changing, the type of people that we're getting is more and more in line with our goal of who we're trying to reach, which is people that have no faith, that don't go to church, that maybe don't believe in God. And that's only possible when people invite. That we're
Right.
now we're at over 50% of our people that come to Alpha aren't parishioners at our church, which is a huge thing, because that shows me that people are inviting.
Right. That is so cool. That is so cool. And so, and the role that the quality of your team has on people's confidence to invite their friends, what would you say about that?
Their confidence to invite their friends from the team.
Because the team is high quality,
Yeah.
high caliber, great experience.
Yeah, well, I think one thing is, and this is one of the reasons that you have to keep Alpha a low entry bar, and to avoid the temptation to jump into deep Catholic theology or anything like that. Because what happens in your mind when you go to invite someone to something, you think, are they going to like it? Are they going to fit in? Are they going to get something out of it? And so if you're only talking about the rosary and deep theological things, and then you want to bring your friend that's questioning if he believes in God, it's not going to be a good fit, right?
No.
I want to invite my friend that doesn't believe in God to a group that only talks about the rosary. Like,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be the place for them, right? And so keeping Alpha about that entry level of faith, like keeping it open to different experiences and opinions, and always tailoring it to someone that doesn't believe in God is such a key to growing Alpha, because then you invite your friend, if they had that experience in their small group of Alpha and they're like, oh my gosh, I have a friend that's questioning the existence of God, bam, you can invite them. But kind of having that long-term vision of Alpha, of being like,
Yeah.
even if we're not there yet, even if we're still not reaching the atheist, like
Right.
trying to keep the integrity of the small group for the atheist, because that sends a message to the team that when the next season comes around, that they can invite their atheist friend to Alpha.
Right on. I love it. So how do you identify? I remember not that long ago, I met up with a friend of mine who's a priest, and we were talking about team and not just for Alpha at all. It was just in ministry in general. And I started talking about people of capacity or something. He stopped me in my tracks. Said, "Ron, stop. I don't see what you see." I'm like, well, what do you mean? He said, what I mean is I don't see what you see in people. And I didn't know people couldn't see capacity in people. So what do you say about that? Like, how do you identify people who have the capacity to make great team members and maybe develop into potential leaders?
Yeah, totally. And that's something that now, with Alpha growing so large, when we have over 80 people on the team, I don't know who's getting invited back to Alpha. I rely on my team's recommendations
Mm.
to identify who in their groups would be great helpers for the next season. So some things that I tell my team during the debrief or in the pre-meeting sessions, one is an acronym called FACT. So FACT, faithful, available, contagious, and teachable.
Mm.
So that's the idea. Like, those are kind of 4 characteristics you'd look for an awesome team player. So someone that's faithful, that they're open to God. In Alpha, you don't even have to really be a Christian yet, but that you're open, because sometimes you coming back on team is a great way of growing them in their faith, and they're just the helper, so they're not going to be leading a group anyway. And a lot of times also they're great inviters, because they're still hanging out in crowds that aren't super Christian, but open to God at least, like that they want to be open. If it's a different kind of ministry, maybe they need to be a practicing Catholic. Available, that they can be, that they can show up. Like, you don't want someone to be on your team that says they can only be there half the time. And so you want someone to be there that's available. And contagious, which I think is maybe the most important one. And contagious has to get with getting people that other people want to be around. And that doesn't mean being like the crazy extrovert that's super outgoing and talkative. It might just be that person that's comfortable to be around, that
Yeah.
person that you feel like you can be honest to.
Mm.
And then teachable, in that they're going to come in with an open mind to learn, that they're going to be open to learning about the process of Alpha, and to grow and being a better team player. But then some things in addition that I love to share with my team is look for people that have been positively impacted by Alpha. If they've had a really good experience of Alpha, a lot of ways they can grow in being a great team player, because being a helper is not hard. It's just
Right.
about listening and helping other people feel comfortable and trying to love them. Like, that's it. It's really not that complicated. So it's a really low entry point into leadership, into being on the team. But
Right.
if they've been positively impacted by Alpha, if they make people feel comfortable, those are 2 huge things that I look for in coaching my team to invite back
Beautiful.
team members.
That is so helpful and so concrete to be able to take that. And let me ask you something. Have you ever shared this with team members? Because you say your alpha's so flippin' big. Like, what a great problem to have that you can't personally recruit people because you're not in everybody's small group. And so you entrust them. Have you ever had people, after you've described that, give you recommendations for people that weren't quite as good a fit as you thought? It's like, what were you thinking?
Totally. But I think that we have a lot of chances to coach them in Alpha. So even if it's someone like, okay, maybe you could have chose someone better. Like, we're going to go over the rules of being a helper over and over and over and over again. And so we're trying to coach them on, what does it really mean to listen? What does it mean to create that space? What does it mean to just not talk? because I think that's a real challenge for a lot of people.
It's a skill set.
It's a skill set, but we're gonna coach them in that. But
Yeah.
also, I'm really invested in the team. I'm more invested in the team than I am to the guests as leading alpha. And so I'm gonna be really aware of how are these people in conversation? Are they showing up? Do I take attendance for things? Because that's showing me that fact. And if
Yes.
they're and then when we move some up to be a co-host, I've had a lot of opportunities to see what they're like. And then I'm also going to rely on the host's recommendation of how their team was. So after every alpha season, I call up the host and be like, how are the people on your group? And usually they're really afraid to say anything negative,
Yes.
because I always try to coach people too, that you're not judging someone's character or who they are as a person, saying if they would be good in this role at all. It's just, are they kind of fulfilling this framework that we have for this position? And so getting some kind of feedback from them too helps with making your co-host better. And then they have to do it again to become a host. So your quality is just getting refined as the process goes, because the host is the most important person in your small group.
Wow. And they really are mentoring the people that are on the team with them by the sounds of it. And we want people to develop into that level of influence and responsibility. That is so helpful for people to hear, because I think I think many times we can just be so concerned with having enough people that we don't always get the right people. And that wrecks people's experience of any ministry.
Yes.
Right?
And I think too, one thing that I do, which was kind of felt really nerve-wracking at first, but I was like, I'm setting the amount of small groups that I have. I'm getting my team together before I know how many people are signing up. And at first that felt so counterintuitive, because like, well, what if I'm going to have to ask people off the team because I didn't get enough signups? Like, that's such a risky thing. But I was also only making as many small groups as I had the team for. If it was going to be a smaller alpha than it could be, I'm capping it. I've had to cap several alphas because we don't have the team available to make that many groups awesome.
So why wouldn't you just have less team members, maybe put one team member at every table and just take as many as possible? Like, Louis, you could lose them. Like, why wouldn't you do that?
Because having the 4 people on team, having the 2 helpers, having the co-host and the host, it's so vital to growing alpha. And having that long-term vision of what you want alpha to be versus just this season alone. Right. Because if you have bad alpha groups, which happens, like it happens all the time, it's hard to have perfect quality control. It's never going to happen. But emphasizing that quality is overall going to help you grow your alpha. And so even if you lose an opportunity this season with some people, hopefully they come back later. But then there's going to be other people out there too that need it. But emphasizing the team first felt really risky for me, but I definitely have never regretted it. And I tell every church to do that. Set your team first. See how many groups you can have.
Yeah, it's so true. I remember doing that too. And it is scary because you never want to ask people off the team when they've already put in their schedule, they've sacrificed. But sometimes that's why I'd ask the more seasoned people, to not show up if we didn't need them. Exactly. But anyway, you said, if you want to grow your alpha, and some people might be listening and say, who cares if I grow my alpha? What about parish roles? Does it make it like, why? What difference does it make? Like, how has taking this approach to your alpha, has it impacted beyond how your alpha team and how well you do alpha? Tell me about that.
I was talking to one of the big leaders in our church. Her name is Mary Ellen, and we were just talking about, like, we love St. John's Evangelist. It's just such a unique place that we're so big. So many people are so connected communally, but it just doesn't really feel that cliquey. And I was like, it was pretty cool, because I feel like a lot of times you can be in tight-knit communities, but they get really cliquey. And if you're not in, you're out. And she turned to me, she said, it's because of alpha. It's because so many big people in the community that have brought a lot of people together have been through alpha, and they have to come every week and not talk to their best friends, but to talk to the stranger. And we ingrain that in the team. Like, you are not here to talk to your other friends on the team. You can stay after alpha, after a team debrief, hang out as long as you want, go out for drinks later, but this is all about the guest. And this is particular for the guest that feels the most uncomfortable. That's the most awkward. Like, this is what alpha is for. But what that does is it changes the culture. That you're not just there for the person that you click the most with at church on Sunday. Like, you have to have those eyes to be like, who's in the corner looking super like they don't feel like they belong here? Like, that's what we do Alpha for. And when people have that experience, it changes the culture, which changes their Sunday experience,
Mm.
because people aren't just there for themselves and their best friends, but
Wow.
for those people that are exploring.
What a great example of, and can you give an example? Actually, I'm going to save that question. I'm going to go back to this question. So, FACT helps you identify people, and you're looking for people who've had a great experience
Uh-huh.
and have made other people feel comfortable. Love it. And so, okay, you've identified them. How do you recruit them? Does everybody say yes to Louis? Like, how's that
Definitely
work?
not. Um, I would say that over 50% of people that ask to be helpers say no. And that's a good thing, because you want to make that ask like we're asking something of them. I tell them they have to be there to every session, to every pre-meeting, to every post-meeting, to come on the weekend away, to come into the training nights, to invite 5 people. Like, I ask a lot, and
Yes.
I don't lower that ask. If you say you can't come to the weekend away, most of the time I say you can't be on the team. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, that's part of what it means to be there. But the reason that it's that way is because that impacts the guests.
Hmm.
And that when the team is 100% committed, when the team is there and shows up and has that mentality, it changes everything for the guests. And so with that, because it's a big ask, I have to, like, people are going to say no.
Right.
And I try to make it as clear as possible what I'm asking. And so I usually make the phone calls, talk to them on the phone, tell them I'd love to have them be a helper, and then I follow up with an email describing all of that commitment, and then ask them if they have any questions. And it takes a lot of time, and I
Yes.
start working on it immediately after Alpha ends. Usually, because we do an Alpha in the fall and in the spring, and there's a short turnaround in between the fall and the spring
Yeah.
session. And so sometimes I have to work on it during Alpha, but being proactive, because you have to get that team together first before you get the guests. So I always try to have my team finalized by Christmas for the fall. So I start making those phone calls early and get everyone committed before. But
Wow.
that I feel like it's such a key.
Well, it just goes to show how much work is behind this. Sometimes people who don't know what it takes to create this kind of a movement in a church that spills into every other aspect of parish life, how much work it takes and how much intentionality it takes. But if I was a person, and let's say you were given my name as somebody who would be good to come back on team, and you were calling me to invite me, let's walk through that. For all those people listening, this is for you.
Yeah.
What would you say to me? So the phone rings. Hello.
Hey, Ron. Um, I would say something like, I'm putting together my next team for Alpha, and so and so recommended you from your group. They said you were just wonderful to have being a part of the group. I was wondering if you'd be interested in becoming a helper for our next season. A helper is a really simple role. It focuses on listening and helping people in their group feel comfortable. I would say who their helpers were, so they have some kind of frame of reference for what the role was looking like. And
Awesome.
then I would say, ask them if they're interested. If they are, I would say, great. I'm going to follow up with you with an email outlining what the commitment and the roles and the dates look like. And you can let me know if you have any questions, and I'll follow up with you after that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. One of that's really thing that's cool that you did, and I love it because I do it too, and I think it's so important. And for those of you that are listening that think, I got to get better at this, I call it the I see in you conversation. But
Mm,
that's hard because I just asked you, if somebody else gave you my name, how would you have that conversation? Because you're not the one who know. If you weren't the one who knows me, it's
uh-huh,
tricky. But what you said is so and so recommended you,
uh-huh.
right? And so that's a perfect example. So if I knew you, Louis, I would say, Louis, I've been watching how the rest of our small group interacted with you, and you just bring a lot of joy to people. You make people feel comfortable. You're exactly the type of person who makes a great experience for the people coming in the next wave of Alpha. And I'd just be so fun to work with you. And because I see that you really have the character and the personality to make Alpha an amazing experience. I'm wondering if you become back on team. So it would be what do I honestly see in you? But in the case that I gave you, where it was somebody else giving you the name, it would be what you said is, hey, I was talking to so-and-so who is the leading your team, and they said that you were a lot of fun. People really responded well to you. And that's exactly the type of people we like to have back on team, because you make for great experience for the next person. With that in mind, I'm wondering if you would come back on team as a helper. And so that's just a tip for all of you listening. It's that Louis outlined the FACT and then the I see in you. And those are two ways to identify people of capacity and then recruit them and make it very personal. But as Louis is saying, actually very clear. What I love about what I'm hearing from you, Louis, you don't ask for a little and hope you can grow it. You ask for a lot and you maintain it.
Totally. It's a big ask.
It's a big ask.
But the thing that's crazy is the more I've been asking of people, of my volunteers, the more they say yes to things because their lives are being changed. And I would have been shocked when I started this that people will go, not even kidding, some young families will go to like 3 church things a week. And I'm just was blown away by it because it's like it's so much. And they'll do it. I know people
And
that will go to
why will they do it?
because they're getting value from it. They're a part of something. They feel like they have a role and that their friends are there and that they're building community and that they're helping change the world. Like it's they do it, but they don't respond to manipulation, right? I think that sometimes can be our tactic with wanting to get people to do things.
Right.
People hate feeling manipulated, but when you make people feel free, that doesn't mean asking less, but you're just giving them permission to say no. This is how it is. Like, I would love for you to be a part of it, but if it's not the right time for you, that's okay. There'll be somebody else. And I don't need to have my alpha team be huge because I'm about making it quality.
Right. So if you only have enough for 5 small groups, then you'll have 5 small groups. If you have enough for 50 small groups, you'll have 50 small groups.
If you have enough for 2 small groups, that's a start. Like, it doesn't need to be big because you're going to grow it. Because if you do the small right, you're going to have more and more people that can come back on team and that can serve and that it can grow from. But there's no need for it to be big right away.
So good. And so, Louis, I want you to think for a second. I want you to think of a story, a face, a name of somebody that came into Alpha, not quite sure why, or who knows where they were at, but not necessarily perfectly convinced. And then all of a sudden went through this leadership pipeline and then spilled out into another ministry and is continuing to add impact to your church's mission. Can you think of somebody?
Yeah. I can think of a couple of people. But there's one cool story she's pretty recently came back to really, she had no faith. She wasn't going to church for a long time. She grew up Catholic, but really had no faith, really no experience of Jesus other than went to church when she was a kid.
Sure.
And she was brought to Alpha from a friend. And she said she waited in her car for 15 minutes scoping out people that were coming in and was like, okay, like I can fake it for a night. That was kind of her mentality coming in. And then she came in and she started sharing things. She said it was early. I don't remember how many sessions it took, but she started sharing things that she said she had never shared with anyone else before. And she's like, why am I telling people all this? But it was because she was feeling so safe. Yeah. So she was feeling safe to show her real self. And she had a really powerful experience. She encountered the Holy Spirit. Her life was changed. Her emotional life experienced so much emotional healing through Alpha, through the healing night, through the weekend away. And she started coming back. She came back on team as a guest or as a helper, and then she came back, and now she's a Connect group leader. And now she just keeps on running more and more things. And she just went on a mission trip this last weekend. She's like, I'm going to tell everybody about this mission trip because it was so amazing. But she's such a good inviter. But it's crazy to think that a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, she didn't really even believe in God.
Her goal was to fake it one night.
Goal was to fake it one night. But where was the impact? It was that she felt comfortable in her small group to be honest with people that she just met and was telling them things that she had never told them before. And then that what happened with experiencing that kind of love in the group is she was open to the Holy Spirit. Her heart started to trust that God was working through these people that were some reason kind to me. And like, maybe I can let God into my life. And then she said that healing night, she cried the entire time in her small group, and she's never cried in front of anyone her whole life. And wow. She said that she just experienced so much healing from that. But just the experience of the team and the openness to the Holy Spirit, or the experience of your small group, I should say, and the openness to the Holy Spirit really go hand in hand.
What a beautiful story. I mean, that's why we do what we do, isn't it? And I'm so glad. And it's so cool because I'm often like, we just launched a course called the Parish Evangelization course for leaders, as you know. And the whole thing is it's not just about alpha, it's about renewing your parish. And the principles that you apply in this process can transform your entire church.
100%. 100%.
Wow. Louis, it's so good to have you on. And thank you to all of you guests who've been tuning in. I know we did a survey of 100 churches who run Alpha. And the second most common problem they have is recruiting new team members. So I hope this podcast has been really helpful for you. And if it has, you might want to sign up for our course. Go to huntleyleadership.com, hit on courses, and there's lots of information there. Louis, thanks for what you've done. Thanks for sharing. It's so fun talking to you.
Thanks, Ron. It's been great being here.
God bless.
I want to encourage you, as you lead this week, be faithful to God and generous to others. See you next time, and remember, if you're still breathing, you are powered for impact.